What happens to the human psyche when a person commits a terrible crime, convinced that they are intellectually superior to the laws of morality and society? Can a human being truly commit murder without feeling guilt, or will the weight of their own conscience tear them apart from the inside out? Few novels in world literature have probed the darkest depths of the human mind, the agony of guilt, and the miracle of spiritual redemption as profoundly as Fyodor Dostoevsky's psychological masterpiece, Crime and Punishment. Welcome to Book Essence, where we unlock the essence of every book so you get the wisdom without spending weeks reading. Today, we are breaking down Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Set in the gloomy, impoverished streets of 19th century St. Petersburg, this legendary novel is far more than a murder mystery. It is a terrifying, brilliant exploration of radical ideology, psychological torment, the limits of human reason, and the ultimate path toward redemption. Let us unlock it. Section 1. The Extraordinary Man Theory, Raskolnikov's dangerous idea. To understand Crime and Punishment, you must first step inside the mind of its protagonist, Raskolnikov. Raskolnikov is a destitute, highly intelligent former university student living in a suffocating, tiny room in St. Petersburg that resembles a closet or a grave. Isolated from society, hungry and brooding in solitude, Raskolnikov formulates a dangerous philosophical theory. He publishes an article arguing that humanity is divided into two distinct categories, the ordinary and the extraordinary. The ordinary people make up the vast majority of humanity. They are bound by law, custom, tradition, and conventional morality. Their duty is to preserve society, follow rules, and reproduce. The extraordinary people, on the other hand, are the rare visionaries, leaders, and innovators of history, figures like Napoleon Bonaparte. Raskolnikov argues that these extraordinary individuals have an inherent right and even a duty to step over moral boundaries and break the law if it serves a higher purpose or a great idea. In his eyes, if Napoleon had to shed blood to achieve his grand vision for humanity, history forgave him because he was extraordinary. Raskolnikov asks himself a fatal question: am I a louse like everyone else, or am I an extraordinary man? Am I a trembling creature, or do I have the right? To test his theory and prove his intellectual dominance, Raskolnikov decides to commit a cold, calculated murder. Section 2. The Crime: A Cold Calculation and a Fatal Error. Raskolnikov targets Alyona Ivanovna Aliena, an elderly, malicious pawnbroker who takes advantage of the poor and desperate people of St. Petersburg. In his mind, she is a parasite on society who does no good for anyone. He rationalizes that by killing her and stealing her wealth, he can perform dozens of good deeds, save his impoverished family, finish his education, and serve humanity. He plans the murder down to the minute. Armed with an axe, Raskolnikov enters the pawnbroker's apartment and strikes her dead. However, his cold intellectual calculation collapses almost immediately when an unexpected variable enters the room. Lizaveta, the pawnbroker's gentle, innocent, and intellectually disabled half-sister, unexpectedly walks into the apartment and discovers the gruesome scene. Overwhelmed by panic and instinct, Raskolnikov is forced to murder Lizaveta as well. This unintended second murder shatters Raskolnikov's ideological justification. He did not just eliminate a worthless parasite, he butchered an innocent, defenseless woman. Trembling with terror, he manages to grab a small pouch of trinkets and escape the scene undetected. But as he steps out into the streets of St. Petersburg, the real horror begins. Section 3. The Real Punishment: Psychological Disintegration. Many people expect the title Crime and Punishment to refer to the legal penalty, arrest, trial, and imprisonment, but Dostoevsky reveals a far more terrifying truth. The legal punishment is almost irrelevant compared to the immediate, unbearable psychological punishment inflicted by conscience and isolation. The moment Raskolnikov commits the crime, he does not feel like a triumphant, extraordinary conqueror like Napoleon. Instead, he experiences profound psychological disintegration. First, he experiences intense alienation. The blood on his hands creates an invisible, impassable wall between him and the rest of humanity. He can no longer speak normally with his loving mother, his devoted sister Dunya, and his loyal friend Razumikin. Every human interaction feels like an unbearable lie. Dostoevsky shows that the true essence of sin and crime is self-enforced isolation from the human community. Second, his mind breaks under severe fever, delirium, and paranoia. He hides the stolen trinkets under a stone, never even checking how much money he stole. He becomes obsessed with the crime scene, compulsively revisiting the pawnbroker's apartment and talking about the murder to strangers and police officers, practically begging to be caught just to relieve the pressure in his mind. His intellect rationalized the crime, but his human soul revolts against it. Section 4. The psychological cat-and-mouse game with Porfiry Petrovich. As Raskolnikov spirals into paranoia, he enters a brilliant psychological duel with Porfiry Petrovich, the lead detective investigating the murders. Porfiry Petrovich is not a typical detective who relies strictly on physical evidence. He's a master of human psychology. He reads Raskolnikov's published article on the extraordinary man and realizes immediately that Raskolnikov possesses the psychological profile of the killer. Instead of arresting Raskolnikov right away, he plays a subtle, tormenting game of cat and mouse. He invites Raskolnikov for chats, discusses philosophy, subtly drops hints, and pretends to be disorganized while systematically dismantling Raskolnikov's mental defenses. Porfiry knows that a suspect driven by pride and guilt will eventually break down under psychological pressure. In one of the book's most famous encounters, Porfiry tells Raskolnikov that he will not arrest him yet, because if he locks him up, Raskolnikov will settle into a routine, but if he leaves him free, Raskolnikov will circle around the police station like a moth around the flame, until he turns himself in. Porfiry urges Raskolnikov to confess, telling him that suffering is necessary to restore his soul. Section 5. Sonya Marmeladova, Love, Faith, and Self-Sacrifice. If Porfiry Petrovich represents law and logic pressing down on Raskolnikov, Sonya Marmeladova represents grace, love, and spiritual redemption. Sonya is the young daughter of Marmeladov, a destitute, alcoholic former official whom Raskolnikov met in a tavern. To save her starving stepmother and young siblings from absolute ruin, Sonya commits a selfless sacrifice. She turns to prostitution. Despite the degradation of her trade, Sonya maintains a pure, deeply faithful, and compassionate heart. Drawn to her purity amid suffering, Raskolnikov seeks her out. In a landmark scene, he kneels before her and says, "I did not bow down to you, I bowed down to all human suffering." Eventually, unable to bear the burden of his secret any longer, Raskolnikov confesses his crime to Sonya. Sonya does not react with hatred or disgust. She bursts into tears, hugs him, and promises never to leave his side. She reads him the biblical story of the resurrection of Lazarus and tells him that to heal his soul, he must go to the crossroads, kiss the dirty earth he has defiled, confess his crime to the world, and accept his suffering. Section 6. Confession, Exile, and the Path to Redemption. Crushed by Porfiry's psychological pressure, disgusted by his own ideological failure, and moved by Sonya's unconditional love, Raskolnikov finally walks to the police station and confesses to the double murder. He is sentenced to 8 years of hard labor in Siberia. Sonya faithfully follows him to the penal colony, living in a nearby town and visiting him regularly, despite his initial coldness and pride. Even in prison, Raskolnikov's pride resists for a long time. He does not regret the murder because it was morally wrong. He regrets it because he failed his own test and proved that he was not an extraordinary man. He remains sullen, isolated, and disliked by the other prisoners. The ultimate turning point occurs during a severe illness in Siberia. Raskolnikov has a prophetic dream of a global plague caused by microscopic intelligent creatures that infect people with absolute pride and fanatical belief in their own intellectual ideas. Everyone infected believes they alone possess the absolute truth, leading to catastrophic war, chaos, and societal destruction. This dream exposes the ultimate danger of his extraordinary man ideology. He sees that pure intellectual pride leads to global annihilation. Upon recovering, Raskolnikov looks out at the vast river in Siberia and sees Sonya waiting for him. A sudden emotional breakthrough occurs. He falls at her feet, weeping, realizing that he loves her deeply. His heart finally thaws, his intellectual pride shatters, and he accepts love, humility, and faith. His real sentence has ended, and his spiritual resurrection has begun. Section 7. Major themes and core lessons for modern readers. Crime and Punishment is packed with timeless philosophical insights that remain intensely relevant to our lives today. First, the danger of rationalizing evil. Raskolnikov proves that human intellect can justify any atrocity if it is detached from morality, empathy, and conscience. When we use abstract theories to treat human beings as tools or statistics, we open the door to cruelty. Second, the inevitability of conscience. You can deceive the police, society, and your friends, but you cannot deceive your own subconscious mind. Guilt is not just a social construct, it is a biological and spiritual reality. True peace can never be built on a lie. Third, isolation versus community. Sin and deception isolate us from others, turning our own minds into prisons. Healing requires vulnerability, confession, and rejoining the human community through truth. Fourth, redemption through suffering and love. Dostoevsky does not glorify suffering for its own sake, but he shows that suffering, when accepted with humility and love, has a transformative, cleansing power that can rebuild a shattered soul. Conclusion. Final takeaways. Let us bring together the ultimate wisdom from Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. 1. Beware of intellectual pride. Do not let abstract ideas, theories, or feelings of superiority blind you to fundamental moral truths and the value of every human life. 2. Listen to your internal moral compass. No matter how clever your justifications are, your conscience will always demand truth and alignment. 3. Face reality and take responsibility. Running from your mistakes or blaming circumstances only prolongs your internal suffering. True strength lies in accepting responsibility and making amends. 4. Embrace love and humility. Compassion, selflessness, and genuine connection with others are the ultimate antidotes to despair, isolation, and psychological paralysis. Fyodor Dostoevsky leaves us with a profound, timeless truth. A human being cannot be saved by intellect alone. Real transformation happens when the heart breaks open, pride gives way to humility, and love guides us back into the light. That is the essence of Crime and Punishment, and that is what we do here at Book Essence. We take the world's most powerful books and unlock their wisdom, so you can build something real starting from exactly where you are. If this script brought you value, share it with someone who loves deep literature and philosophical wisdom today. Keep reading, keep reflecting, and keep unlocking your essence. See you next time.